Okay, yes, um, I'm one of those people, you all seem to be a little too young to remember this, but there was a time when there was a movement to move people from the United States to West Africa, specifically Liberia. My father was one of the people involved in this. This is back in the 1920s. The UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association, under Marcus Garvey and others. Um, my father was the secretary of the chapter in Atlanta, Georgia. He had gotten the drive to move to Liberia um, when he was a child back in the 19 teens, 1910, 1915. Um, while he married and told his wife, my mother, that to be prepared that one of these days he would be moving to Liberia. And that if she felt that that wasn't the thing to do, then she should not get married. Well, she agreed that she would go. So all of the children were born and we were raised with the understanding that at some point in time we would be moving to Liberia. I was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My father was born in Griffin, Georgia. My mother herself was born in Chattanooga. They got married in Chattanooga, and all the children were born there except for one. Um, we moved to Liberia in 1951. My father finally came to had the ability to make this move that he had wanted to do from 1923 or 24. He finally succeeded in 1951. He carried all of the children except for two who were adults. One was in the military and the other was a practicing engineer. So this is how we ended up in Liberia. Now, the reason that he wanted to do that was because Jim Crow had raised its head in the South in the 1880s, 1890s, and when he was born in 1904, it was rampant. His father lost their farm through the Jim Crow rules that were taking over the South. His farm was taken from him. That's when my father made that decision that he would go to Liberia. So that was his life. And he carried through with that and eventually went on to Liberia. So this is how we ended up in Liberia.
What
When
was it like? What
when
was
we, yeah, go ahead.
what was it like when you first arrived in Liberia, having not stepped there before? The first day you got to Liberia.
Well, I was 11 years old when we got there. And on the ship going to Liberia, because you traveled by ship in those days, airplanes didn't do it, didn't make those trips in 1951. I had a personal dream to climb a banana tree. I had no knowledge that a banana tree was really not a tree. It was a big weed, and you can't climb a weed. But when we got to Liberia, it was as a family. My father carried himself, my mother, and four children. We went all at the same time, five children. Um, he had $90 in his pocket when we got to Liberia. We had no residence set aside for us. We had to find a place to stay. Well, fortunately, one of the Liberian students in Chicago, where we came from, because we were living in Chicago at this point, had notified his uncle that we were coming. And his uncle had arranged to have someone to meet us and find us a place to stay. Well, he didn't do his homework. When we got there, we had no place to stay. So the first day we were there, we were looking for a place to sleep. Fortunately, this fellow had an aunt who had a big house that was empty. So he went to her, carried us to her, And she said, "Oh, God believes that we should help our fellow man. I'm going to give you a place to stay until you can find another place." So she gave us her house, more rooms than we needed. It was a very large house. Day one, the first miracle was that. And
Wow.
we had miracles succeeding on after that. It was something that was really not normal. I mean, it was really exceptional the way we were received. What looked like it was going to be obstacles very often turned out to be blessings. So that was the first day. March 31, 1951. It was a Sunday.
Hmm. Wow. From the port to a place to stay. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
And then you started to live in Liberia. Did you make new friends?
Well, it's hard to, as an 11-year-old, you're a elementary school student, so you obviously you get friends. But I think it's more important to talk about the experience of my family
Yes.
at that time. Um, my experience obviously was one that was exciting. It was new. You were in a new place. You had a lot of people who you could find to be friends and stuff like that. However, our family took advantage of all of the things. The Constitution of Liberia states that anyone of African descent can find Liberia as their home. It is designed and built for anyone of African descent. Um, so when we got there, we knew that this was going to be our home. We were given the message from the government immediately that they were going to help take care of us. They helped my father find a job. They um, they gave us a little stipend for the first 3 months. In other words, they paid our rent for the first 3 months. They gave my father a job, which he built on, and my another one of my brothers who was of age and one of my sisters who was of age were given jobs as well, sponsored by the government. So it's very much like an immigrant coming to the United States. We built on that, and the rest was history. I mean, the opportunities were there. My father made sure that he and all of his children took advantage of those opportunities that were made available to us, and that was using the opportunities that the government gave us to work and to build on that, to bring the tools that we had from the United States to Liberia. And that was the history that we built in Liberia. From that, we turned into building companies. We had in our family, each one of the children had at one point in time developed a business of some sort. So there were 5 or 6 businesses sponsored, owned, and managed by members of my family. And these were all because the opportunities were there that we did not have here in the United States. The big problem that we had in the United States was not only that my father's father had lost his farm through the Jim Crow um, dealings that were going on at that time. We were all in the technical backgrounds. We had my father was a farmer and a road builder, which he had done in Georgia in their communities. He built roads and all. He could not get a job in the United States that once he came north, and believe it or not, he did better in the South in road building than he did in the North. However, he couldn't farm in the North, which is what he really wanted to do. He knew that his children would not be able to develop into the people that he wanted them to be, um, living in the South and even in the North. All of the boys became engineers. We went to engineering school. 2 of my brothers graduated as engineers. One was an aeronautical engineer, the other was an electrical engineer. They neither could get jobs match their education. So we could get the education, but we could not practice that education. That was the main reason that going to Liberia was a necessity for us.
Mm.
Um, we
So, yeah.
go ahead.
So what was it like going to college in Liberia? I saw a photograph of you at Cottington with Bill Russell.
Yes, yes. I did my first 2 years of education were done in Liberia. Bill Russell, by the way, was um, had a partner who was who was cousins to some Liberian family. So they came to Liberia to build a farm. So for about 3 or 4 years in a row, Bill Russell and Holder came to Liberia to work on their farm. That's how I got to know Bill Russell. Now, it just so happens that one of my older brothers, the one who built the electronics firm that I was an owner of, was a professional basketball player here in the United States as well. He played for the Globetrotters. So he and Bill got to be friends. So that's how you saw Bill playing basketball with us at Cuttington. We went to Cuttington. Cuttington, in those days, the universities in Liberia did not offer engineering degrees. So we had to go overseas to get engineering training. That's how I ended up back in the United States, where I got a degree in engineering. So Charlie, that was the foundation for what you experienced with me.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. This is really
You all,
interesting. This.
I just want to tell them that Charlie was one of our star technicians. He was
It was like an unending vacation. I really love traveling. I went to Guinea, to Senegal, to all these different countries, and it was really. I was young. I was not married. I had no children, and so it was a lot of fun. It was the best part of my life.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You were one of the people that I could say, totally get on the airplane and go to Conakry or go to Dakar and do a job, and you would do it and come back. With the computer. That's how I got to send you to the United States for school.
Yes, and yeah, I came here in 1982, and then I went back.
Oh, you did go back.
Oh yeah, I went back, and we worked for a while. I came here only because of the Civil War. That's when I finally moved to come here. So when you were in Liberia, going to school in Sweden, I believe, and then coming back to Chicago, this country changed a little, and we have Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. We had the civil rights in 1964, in 1954 and 1964. Why did you still go back to Liberia in 1965 after your education?
Well, Liberia was home. You know, one of the things about Black Americans, we don't really understand that immigrating to Africa is not a one-way street. So the American Blacks that immigrated to Africa, and my father taught us back in the 40s and 50s, that doesn't mean that when we leave the United States and go back to Africa, that we are abandoning the United States. We are doing the same thing that the Italian Americans, that the Irish Americans, the Polish Americans, they would come to the United States and make use of the benefits that they could, that they found here, but they did not forget their heritage.
Mm-hmm.
The heritage of Black Americans, and it's a point I've always tried to make to people, is that when we leave the United States, New York, Chicago, Detroit, or wherever, and go to Africa, that doesn't mean that we're abandoning our family, our relatives, and our culture that we leave here. You carry what's good from that with you there, but you remain you may become a citizen of Ghana or Liberia or Nigeria, but you still have something in you that remembers your cousins and your uncles and your aunts here in the United States. There is a lot of good that was here. In 1951, when we went to Liberia, there was a lot of bad stuff. we did not ever see the opportunity of becoming full U.S. citizens, members of the society. That was the reason we went.